thought the security system was protecting my house until I realized someone else still had access. Nightmare 1. After several cars were broken into on our street, the neighborhood decided to organize overnight patrols. At first, I thought the idea sounded ridiculous. Most of us barely even knew each other beyond waving while pulling into our driveways. But once security footage started circulating online showing masked people checking car doors at night, everyone suddenly became paranoid. That's when Curtis stepped in. He lived near the entrance of the subdivision and immediately volunteered to coordinate patrol schedules. He was in his mid-40s, former military according to him, and took the entire thing far more seriously than anyone else. He created maps, assigned routes, printed emergency contact sheets. At first, people appreciated the effort. Honestly, I did too. My wife worked overnight shifts at the hospital 3 nights a week, and knowing people were supposedly watching the neighborhood made me feel a little better. Curtis especially seemed interested in learning everyone's schedules. Just helps us know what's unusual, he explained during one of the meetings. At the time, that sounded reasonable. But after a few weeks, small things started feeling off. Whenever Curtis wore patrol near our house, he slowed down. Not slightly, noticeably. I caught him several times shining his flashlight through side gates or toward backyard fences instead of the street. One night, I watched him stop outside our bedroom window for almost a full minute before continuing down the sidewalk. I told myself he was just being thorough. Then my wife mentioned something strange. He asked if I was still working nights on Thursdays. I frowned. How would he know that? She shrugged, probably from one of the meetings. But something about it bothered me. A few nights later, I woke up around 3 a.m. because our dog started growling toward the backyard. At first, I thought maybe there was an animal outside. Then I saw flashlight beams moving across the fence, slowly, methodically. I grabbed my phone and checked the front camera. Curtis was standing in our backyard, not near the gate, not near the alley, near the windows. My stomach dropped. I stepped outside and shouted his name. He jumped slightly, then immediately smiled. "Just checking for intruders," he said calmly. I remember looking around the yard thinking, none of this made sense. Why would an intruder already be inside the fenced backyard? Why was he shining the flashlight directly into the windows? The next morning, I told another neighbor what happened. That's when her face changed. Apparently, Curtis had also been seen lingering near her house while her husband worked night shifts. A week later, police searched Curtis's garage after another resident reported suspicious behavior. They found patrol maps covered in handwritten notes, usually alone. Leaves for work at 7:15. Dog inside. One page had my address circled repeatedly. I stopped participating in Neighborhood Watch after that, because sometimes the people volunteering to protect the neighborhood aren't protecting anyone at all. I thought the scariest part was realizing someone had been studying our routines. But the next nightmare proves some neighbors don't just watch from outside. Sometimes they're documenting everything. If these stories are unsettling so far, make sure to subscribe to Nightmare Central, because the final nightmare gets much darker. Nightmare 2. After an attempted abduction was reported near the elementary school, the entire neighborhood became paranoid almost overnight. People started locking doors during the day. Parents stopped letting their kids ride bikes alone. And within a week, someone created an emergency neighborhood text thread. At first, it actually felt helpful. Neighbors posted about suspicious cars, open garage doors, strangers walking through yards late at night. The messages were constant but reassuring in a strange way. It felt like people were looking out for each other. Then Rachel joined. She lived a few streets over and quickly became the most active person in the group. At first, her updates seemed normal. Black SUV circling Maple Drive. Unknown male checking parked vehicles. Garage left open on Cedar Lane. But over time, her messages became unnervingly specific. Blue Honda returned home at 11:42. Side gate left unlocked behind the Miller house. Lights stayed off all weekend at the corner property. Reading them started making me uncomfortable. Not because they sounded threatening, but because they sounded observant in a way that felt excessive. One night around midnight, I unloaded groceries after working late. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Private message from Rachel. "Everything okay? Saw you carrying boxes inside pretty late." I stared at the screen. There was no reason she should have noticed that. I started paying closer attention after that. Rachel always seemed to know who was home and who wasn't, which neighbors were out of town, who had visitors overnight, who left for work early. It stopped feeling like community awareness and started feeling more like surveillance. Then one evening, a neighbor posted asking if anyone had seen movement behind their house the night before. Rachel immediately responded with screenshots, clear images taken from behind the property line. The angle looked wrong, like the camera wasn't on a house, but elevated somewhere behind the yards. That realization unsettled several people immediately. A few days later, another neighbor found a hidden trail camera strapped high inside a tree bordering multiple backyards. Police eventually discovered several more, all connected to Rachel. Investigators recovered months of recorded footage, children playing, people entering bedrooms, arguments through open windows, entire routines documented without permission. Some cameras were pointed directly into houses. I left the emergency thread the same night police announced the investigation. But even now, whenever I see neighborhood watch groups online, I wonder how many people aren't there to keep others safe, and how many are there because they like watching. Being monitored outside your house is terrifying. But the final nightmare proves sometimes the people protecting your neighborhood don't just watch from a distance. Sometimes they already have access to your home. Nightmare 3. After a violent attempted burglary happened 2 streets away, the neighborhood changed fast. People installed cameras almost overnight. Motion lights appeared on every driveway, and within days, a formal neighborhood watch program was organized. That's when Eric became involved. He immediately stood out because, unlike everyone else, he actually seemed experienced. He claimed he previously worked private security contracts and understood residential vulnerability prevention. Honestly, most of us trusted him immediately. He spoke confidently, explained security systems in detail, pointed out weak entry points around homes that most people never noticed. Soon, Eric started offering free home security inspections, then lock upgrades, then smart camera installations. He even created a shared emergency response system, allowing neighbors to quickly notify each other during suspicious activity. Everyone loved him, including me. At first, Eric came to my house one Saturday afternoon to install upgraded smart locks and reconnect my cameras into the neighborhood system. He explained the new locks allowed emergency access if break-ins or medical emergencies occurred. "It's safer this way," he assured me. I remember feeling relieved afterward. For months, everything seemed normal. Then small things inside my house started feeling wrong. Not dramatic, subtle. A bathroom cabinet slightly open when I knew I had closed it. A kitchen chair positioned differently. Closet light turned on upstairs. I kept convincing myself I was distracted or tired. Until one night I came home nearly 3 hours early because of a cancelled meeting. As soon as I opened the front door, I heard movement upstairs. Heavy footsteps. My chest tightened instantly. Someone was inside. I shouted and heard running overhead. Then silence. Police arrived within minutes and searched the house. No forced entry, nothing stolen, every door and window still locked. At first, officers suspected I imagined the sounds, until another resident reported similar incidents days later, then another, then another. One woman claimed she found muddy shoe prints inside her hallway, despite all doors remaining locked overnight. That's when investigators began focusing on Eric. The truth was worse than any of us imagined. Eric had quietly retained administrator access to dozens of neighborhood smart lock systems after installation. He could unlock doors remotely, disable notifications temporarily, access camera feeds, enter homes without signs of forced entry. Police eventually discovered an abandoned rental property near the edge of town that Eric had secretly converted into what investigators later described as a monitoring space. Inside were multiple screens displaying live camera feeds from inside neighborhood homes, folders organized by address, schedules, daily routines, notes about residents. One spreadsheet listed which homeowners lived alone. Another documented which couples fought frequently. Another was labeled predictable entry windows. My address appeared several times. Investigators later told me Eric may have entered my home more than 20 times over 8 months, usually late at night. Usually for less than 10 minutes, nothing was ever stolen. That's the part that still disturbs me most. He didn't want money. He wanted access. The feeling of walking through someone else's private life unnoticed. Even after moving away, I still wake up sometimes convinced I hear footsteps upstairs. And every time I install a new smart device in my home, I wonder who else might already have access to it. Something even scarier than this nightmare is not watching more videos from Nightmare Central. This was Nightmares of Neighbors. Sleep carefully.